us for having that excellent performance. I think that the state needs to recognize that Southern New Hampshire is the economic engine that drives the funding for the New Hampshire state government. And the disrespect with which they treat us in that regard, I think, is very disappointing in terms of school funding. I don't think that their formulas are anything more than neat little ways to try to channel more money into the communities that individual representatives represent. I think to be fair and equitable, every child should be worth the same amount in our eyes. No children, by virtue of their zip code or their nationality or their upbringing, is worth any more than any other child. So I think that all children should be rewarded, if you will, with drawing the same amount of funding for the state, regardless of where they're from or who their parents are or what their last name sounds like. I think what would I do, and I think what I would do is reflective of what I have done. In the past, I have taken the time to go to Concord and testify. I like the Steve Young model, if I can use that, with the New Hampshire Cafe. There's no other word for that than local leadership. That's what that's called, local leadership that was extended across the state. Prior to Steve doing that, when I was on the council, I asked my fellow council members if they would allow me to represent them with some of the local communities. They voted yes. I went over to meet with Mayor Streeter, the then mayor of Nashua, sat in his office, brought the superintendent with me and the town manager, and we started talking very early strategies about what will the southern communities do in the face of this crisis. Because I was on the town council, I didn't view this as a town council issue, a town government issue. I viewed this as a community issue. So all of us had to get together. All of us had to extend ourselves and have a team approach and extend our leadership throughout the southern communities. Steve Young picked that mantle up and ran with it much better than I was, and accomplished incredible amount by the landmark lawsuit that was carried out and won. So I think that going forward, we need a collective team approach with our state reps, school board, town council, budget committee, whatever it takes, get into Concord, get our voices heard, and make sure that we're represented.
All right. Well, thank you to our panel. I'd like to next go to the audience, see if there are any questions out there. If anybody would like to ask, please come to the microphone.
Well, how much do you think you're only going to talk to the audience? Good afternoon. Thank you all again for stepping up and joining the fray, as we like to say. Mark and Tom, thanks again for continuing your efforts to volunteer in the community. My question is pretty simple. I just want to know what you each think the most critical function of the budget committee is. What's your biggest job?
All right. I think we left off with Mark. Why don't you go first on that one?
I'm going first?
All right.
Somebody's got to go first. Thanks, George, for the question, and thanks for your service. He's running unopposed for school board. Put a plug in for him. I think the biggest job in budget committee is no different than what I've done the last 9 years on the town council, and that's to try my best to listen. You have to understand both sides of any debate or discussion. So that's what I've done for 9 years. That's what I intend to do if I'm elected for the next 3, at least on the budget committee, and that's to listen and to be receptive and open to other ideas. We've got to establish, we're at a critical point in our community, we've got to establish a very strong, very proactive plan with economic development. And to do that, we've got to have forward-thinking people. We've got to have some creative spirit and juices flowing to get to that. We're playing catch-up, quite frankly. You know, we've realized some $8 million in incremental revenues since 2000. Well, half of that came from Granite Ridge, a power plant that half the town, quite frankly, didn't want. And when I first ran in '99, I was a proponent for what was then a proposed facility that the PUC of the state then did cite in Londonderry. If you take that from the equation, we've seen 4 million over 8 years. And we've spent the majority of the morning with town council candidates previously and now with budget committee candidates talking about expenses. And I go back to what we talked about earlier. The balancing act is between the pocketbooks of the taxpayer and the need to provide essential services. And you've got to have revenues to do that. If nothing changes, this year the town council is proposed a budget that is 1.5% increase over last year. That's taking into account increase in utilities, fuel oil, gasoline for police cars, town vehicles, fire trucks, and so forth, and labor increases. The school has seen similar increases the last several years. So I think we're managing it, and there's still some room for improvement. But in my estimation, the biggest challenge is going to be economic development. And to do that, I think we're all going to have to be effective listeners.
Thank you. Deb?
Well, I will be new to the committee, but I'm not new to this community and what's been going on for the last 13 years since I've been here. I definitely agree with Mark to listen, but I have a different rule that I live my life by. It's listen to what's being said as you're reviewing the contracts, talking with those people, and listen to what's not being said. As Don said earlier, that hidden agenda. We need to be more demanding of the facts, the true facts, the upfront facts, so that we can make intelligent decisions. And I also think that in some of the apathy, people just say, here you go. It's your decision to make. It doesn't work that way. They need to be accountable, responsible for presenting those facts properly and with all the hidden agendas. And we also need to be asking the questions when we listen about those hidden agendas and what the consequences of those are to the taxpayers. I'd like to see more definition of roles. I have watched some recent meetings, and during the meetings I hear, well, that's not our role, this is not our role, you're bringing it to the wrong committee. Maybe we need to define the roles of the different committees a little bit better to the taxpayers and to the people that are making the decisions, because people are going to be resenting it, they'll present it to the wrong committee, and they'll get apathetic. They'll say, oh, here we go again, red tape. I think there is a need for making more expeditious decisions. So that makes the need for getting the facts up front more important. Instead of going over and over, it's like watching grass grow, the same things. So getting those facts, but holding those people accountable to present the facts. And not to say, here it is, you guys made a bad decision, or so-and-so committee. They need to be accountable and responsible to bring that. And lastly, I think it's about smart spending. You know, difficult times call for difficult decisions. I can tell you as a credit analyst for an international organization, you ain't seen nothing yet. And, you know, look at the rest of the country. We're up for some tough decisions and tough times. And it's not that anything is more important than the other. But as someone here said earlier, you can't have it all in the same year sometimes. And you do have to look at levels and how we're going to get there and accomplish it. So that's what I have to say. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Tom?
Thanks for the question, George, and good luck in your re-election bid. Preparing the budget, and the community's budget has been said that it's kind of like making sausage. If you watched it close enough, you might never want to eat it. But with that in mind, I think that the Budget Committee should be respectful of the policymaker's role in the budget-making process. And by being respectful, while being respectful, also reflect to the policymakers the voters' wishes as they perceive it, while the policymakers are making that sausage. And then, at the end of the process, to recommend to the voters how we believe as a budget committee, they should vote either for or against